Shortly before Tunnel joined the crew of the Winslow on February 15, 1898, the battleship USS Maine had exploded in the harbor at Havana, Cuba. The blast blew a hole in the ship's side and cost 266 men their lives. President William McKinley had dispatched the Maine to Havana in response to Congress's agitation to do something about the unrest in Cuba, 90 miles off the U.S. shore. American investment there totaled over $50 million. Struggles against Spanish colonial rule had raged off and on for 3 decades, only recently becoming a full-fledged war of independence in 1895. José Martí led the nationalist movement that encouraged all of the island's people to think of themselves as Cubans, put aside racial differences, and throw out their Spanish rulers. Spain's General Valeriano Weyler, a.k.a. the Butcher, hoped to quell unrest by moving rural Cuban families into concentration camps. At least 200,000 people died in them. By 1823, when the Monroe Doctrine discouraged European countries from interfering in the Western Hemisphere, most Central and South American countries had gained independence. In 1898, Spain retained only 2 colonies there, Puerto Rico and Cuba. Weyler's cruelty contributed to the American perception that Spain was an autocratic throwback to a feudal time, and liberating Cuba became a humanitarian imperative. African Americans in particular hoped for the establishment of a Negro Republic on the island. Republican businessmen and bankers urged a reluctant McKinley to protect their Cuban commercial interests, predominantly in the sugar sector. The Democrats, a minority in both houses of Congress, pushed for war to establish democracy in Cuba, even though they feared an ongoing occupation would disadvantage U.S. labor and flood the South with Catholic, mixed-race Cubans. The recently defeated Democratic presidential candidate William Jennings Bryan saw entering the Cuban conflict as a way to fulfill the country's Christian imperative, its manifest destiny to bring democracy to the oppressed. The sinking of the Maine proved the catalyst that solidified U.S. public opinion and persuaded McKinley to ask Congress to declare war. Once American forces were on the ground in Cuba, the Philippines, and Puerto Rico, powerful Republican business interests persuaded Congress and McKinley to stay in those places. Cuba chafed at the lost promise of independence, and the Philippines revolted against U.S. occupation. The outcome confounded Democrats, who deplored the country's new imperial role. The Spanish-American War brought the United States territories in the Atlantic and Pacific. By 1904, the nation found itself embroiled in foreign affairs on an unprecedented scale. Some argued that U.S. foreign involvement, many called it an empire, diverted attention from societal problems at home. They had in mind the chaos of urban living that defined the lives of more and more Americans. The list of problems was long: sanitation, industrial working conditions, corrupt municipal governments, the lack of women's suffrage, and other limits on the vote, powerful trusts, and a mostly unregulated financial system that brought booms and busts. In the years from 1900 to World War I, many Americans came to understand these as problems that could be solved by rational means, which is why we now know this period as the Progressive Era. In large part, the technological and scientific advances of the last 2 decades of the 19th century generated innovations and methods to solve age-old issues in new ways. Improved statistical means for fact-finding documented the sources and extent of problems. Journalists and social scientists exposed and analyzed societal woes, from political corruption to poverty, so that the public could rationally understand the challenges that lay before them. Experts provided data and problem-solving methods, and average citizens organized themselves to confront challenges. Religious groups used progressive methods to root out what they referred to as sin. Idealistic young people set up urban settlement houses to Americanize immigrants. Scientific managers applied new efficiency methods to old production problems in industry. The women who lobbied cities to create sanitary water and sewer systems called their activism municipal housekeeping. Temperance groups, such as the Women's Christian Temperance Union,